Okay, good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maurice Carter. I'm the president of Sustainable Newton, and I'm joined this morning by our vice president, Sarah Vinson, and two very special guests from the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business at the Georgia Tech Scheller School of Business. We have Michael Oxman, who is the managing director of the center, and we have David Eady, who is the industry and it is the mayor. He's here this morning to talk to us about his day job and night job and weekend job. Last January, when we had our kickoff for this year, we were joined by John Lanier, the executive director of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. And John talked to us a little bit about his grandfather, Ray Anderson, his legacy, how that led to the creation of Drawdown Georgia, which we've been very focused on in Sustainable Newton. But the center that Michael and David represent here is also a big part of Ray's legacy and a program that the Anderson family was keenly interested in putting in our state. So I'm gonna let them tell you about that program. But when we talk about sustainable business, I mean, in the 60s and 70s, when Ray was creating that legacy of sustainability and interface, it was a foreign concept for most folks. And I don't know about everybody else on this call, but for me, my news feed is blowing up every day with some new great announcement from companies, in the auto field with GM, Ford, Jaguar, Volvo, and others, making a commitment to 100% electric. FedEx made a huge announcement this week about their sustainability commitments. I saw where Maersk has made a commitment in terms of zero emission tankers on our ocean. So I think it's an exciting time to be in the field of sustainable business. So we're going to let Michael and David tell us about that. And then Sarah is going to share two projects that we did at Sustainable Newton with the city of Covington with students from the program that they're going to tell us about. So with that, Michael, I'll turn it over to you. And again, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Sarah. It's a real privilege to be here and to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that we do. And Maurice, I just want to echo some of the things you said. One is that, being part of a center that has Ray Anderson as its namesake is both humbling and inspiring at the same time. It's a constant reminder of the journey that we're all on to promote more sustainable business practices. And I would also echo, just based on my experience, I've been in this role for just a little over 4 years. And prior to that, I was in and about the energy industry, did some consulting work, and I've had the opportunity to witness how far we've come on sustainability within the business sector with, as you said, Maurice, some of these major commitments that are being made, and also a recognition that we still have a long way to go. So I guess that'll keep us employed for a while is the good news. So with that, I thought we'd just tell you a little bit about our center, and thank you, David. So we are, as Maurice said, we're the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business. We are nested here at Scheller College of Business at Georgia Tech. And essentially what we do is we try to promote the integration of sustainability. And when we say sustainability, it's also useful to pause and say, what are we talking about, right? The term can be all-encompassing. It often historically would conjure up notions of environmental issues, which it still does. But I would submit, and the way we approach sustainability is it's also very much about people. And so the environmental and social issues are both intertwined. So whether you're talking about issues around equity, community engagement, human rights, or climate change and waste, these all are intersecting topics. And interestingly, I digress for one more moment. Interestingly, what I've witnessed over time is the way in which companies, one of the challenges companies have had is that they sometimes will silo these issues out of sort of organizational necessity. So if you're talking to someone in the EHS, Environmental Health and Safety Department, they may not be apprised on what's happening in some of their community engagement work and vice versa. So companies are trying to grapple with this and bring these silos together such that they're all marching to the same tune. in any case, what we try to do is integrate sustainability into both business education and practice. And the way we do that is really through three primary channels. One is we have courses that focus on sustainability, and these are offered at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level. And I'll talk a little bit about a little more in a moment or two about some other opportunities that we offer on a co-curricular basis. We also have a robust lineup of faculty who do research on sustainability. So whether they're accounting professors or finance professors or strategy professors, within that domain, they also have a core interest, research interest, or other related activities that focus on sustainability. So I'm happy to share more about those folks. And then finally, we try to connect the dots between the businesses that we partner with and our student experience and our faculty research. And so this is what our center is tasked to do. And we are, as Maurice mentioned, we are very grateful for the support that we receive from both the Ray C. Anderson Foundation as well as from some of our corporate partners. So we work, as I mentioned, we are nested within the Scheller College of Business, but we are also part of a broader sustainability ecosystem. And this ecosystem, I'm not going to highlight all of the various entities that are noted here. Suffice to say that there's across campus, there are a broad number of initiatives that are focused on related sustainability research, student engagement, business engagement, and so forth. I think it's fair to say that we're from a business perspective, we are the only center who's focused on bringing the business focus and the value proposition for sustainability to the forefront. And so we try to, in our engagement with corporations and others, we try to facilitate relationships across campus as well. There may be some, particularly if there are technical issues, materials, advancement issues, that kind of thing, we would bring in some of our colleagues across campus. One partner I'll mention here, and that David has been working both for our center and for the top organization there on the right, Serve, Learn, Sustain, which is squarely focused on community issues and issues of equity. But I'll let David tell you more about that. Okay, David, you can go to the next one. Oh, actually, sorry, one last thing I do want to mention. What you see there, the RCE Greater Atlanta, is something that, for those of you on the call, if you're not familiar with, it's worthwhile checking out. Essentially, it's a network of all of the universities, pretty much all of the universities in the Greater Atlanta area, plus UGA. And it is focused on the sort of higher ed's role in the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it takes a very, very sort of primary focus on issues of equity across the SDGs and in setting up various projects within this network, which we'll come back to and talk a little bit about more. But if you're not involved in the RCE, I encourage you to get involved. There's a listserv and there's a number of action groups that you can also join.
Just real quickly, Michael, on that is, while the foundational elements are the universities, we have members, participants in the RCE Greater Atlanta from across the business sector, local governments, even some federal government, regional agencies, et cetera. So it's really broad in its participation, and the website for it is rcega.org. You want to go and learn a little bit more?
So I mentioned before that we offer coursework, and a lot of that coursework is focused on experiential learning. It's great to understand the theory, but it's really most of us learn, I think, by doing and by experiencing actual challenges and problems. So there's a few things here I'll highlight. One is we have a program called the Carbon Reduction Challenge, which we co-lead with the College of Atmospheric Sciences. And it is essentially students who go out on internships, and these internships could be for anything, and not necessarily in the sustainability domain at all. But the students come to us with the permission of their employers to say, while I'm doing my internship, I'm also going to advance some sort of carbon reduction project or opportunity for their employer. And I have a later slide just to share with you a few examples of that. We have our Practicum project, which we're going to talk more about in greater depth, and Sarah's going to talk about a couple of specific projects. We have fellows, so both at the MBA level and ambassadors, we call them at the undergraduate level, that work with our center on projects of interest to them. We will often offer a menu of opportunities, but they will also come with ideas of things they like to work on. They get a small stipend, and they get to participate in our network and engage with our researchers and so forth. We have, at the MBA level, we have students can elect to take an immersive track or a concentration in sustainable business. And similarly, last fall, we started our first cohort of undergraduate students who can earn a certificate in sustainable business. Next slide, please, David. So here's, I mentioned the carbon reduction challenge in the previous slide. This is just a few examples of what the students came up with and some of the companies that they worked with. And there's others. This is actually, I think, from one of the, maybe the first or second cohorts. There's been several cycles since then. But the idea is that they're doing two things, right? They're coming up with carbon reduction opportunities for the company, and ideally in a measurable way. And then similarly, what are the, identifying co-benefits, what are, whether it's dollar savings from energy use reduction or something else. And they quantify these, present them to their employer, and then we usually hold some sort of poster session at the end of the cycle where all of the various CRC participants come together. And then we hold there's a judging, so we will announce like the top three, I think it is, that we choose. But all the projects tend to be very, very strong. And it's so if anyone is out there and has an interest in participating in this, do let us know. We certainly welcome additional expanding that engagement. So the course that I co-teach with a managing director from Accenture is the Sustainable Business Practicum. And what we do in this course, and this is both for undergrads as well as for grad students, is we teach sort of a McKinsey style structured problem solving approach where the students, we walk them through the life cycle of consulting engagement, starting with signing a letter of engagement with their client all the way through to developing a final deliverable for their client, and with structured check-ins along the way. And what you see here are just a handful of examples of the types of projects that we've had in the past. Again, we've been doing this for many years now, so there's lots of examples here. I'll just call out the Autodesk team, helped the company figure out how to develop and put into place a internal price on carbon. And in the process of doing so, they had the opportunity to present to the senior executive team, including the CFO, and they were thrilled with the work that the students did. We've done a couple of projects, both with Delta and Chick-fil-A, in addition to the ones that are noted here, same with Coca-Cola and Rubicon. But what I'd like to, and most recently, or very recently, we've had projects with Sustainable Newton. And I will turn it over to Sarah to talk a little bit more about those.
Great. Thanks, Michael, and thank you, David and Maurice. Well, we really stumbled into the Sustainable Business Practicum. Sustainable Newton had done a candidate questionnaire in 2019, and then candidate for mayor, Steve Horton, I think who's watching, had said that one of the things he wanted to take a look at is better utilizing Covington's compressed natural gas facility. And then I attended the Georgia Climate Conference, and there were great sessions on EVs. And I ran into David, who I've known and just wondered out loud, like, well, how would, you know, a citizen, an organization, or the city know what's the best route to take? CNG, you know, is clean burning fuel, or EVs that everybody's talking about. And that's when he said, this could be a great project for the practicum. And he introduced me to Michael. And we put together an RFP, got some feedback on our first one because it was too wide ranging, you know, wanting to change everybody's opinion about EVs or get their thoughts on EVs, but really focusing on the business aspect for the city. You know, one thing that stood out to me is that a nonprofit could submit a project in, you know, in an advocate position. So we worked with the city of Covington on it, but we were also, it was part of our advocacy to get them to do this idea. I pitched the project, and we got the project and worked with a great team of 3 MBA students. Lots of experience, and one in particular had an energy background, which I think came in handy. And the result indeed ended up being, they came up with a plan for the city to do a two-phase phase-in of EVs and compressed natural gas, and really found that, can I share the screen, Maurice? Okay, let's see. So they found that indeed EVs made sense for some of the smaller, the sedans, SUVs. However, the compressed natural gas made sense, the most sense for the heavy duty vehicles. And by phasing in these vehicles, they could reduce the carbon footprint by 40%. And they also found that it have a significant financial savings, was saving close to 75% on both fuel and maintenance costs. So that was really well received by city officials, and hopefully to this day is informing, you know, what they are thinking and doing. And I can speak about the other project. So our next project that we did last fall was feasibility study of electric vehicle adoption in the city of Covington. And for this project, we worked with 3 undergraduates. They were 4th-year students, and they didn't go as in depth as the MBA students did, and we kind of knew that would be the case. But they did come up with a plan where the city of Covington could reduce their CO2 footprint by 35% by implementing a time of use plan for their electricity sales, because the city of Covington is an electricity provider, which would give EV owners a chance to charge their cars at night when there's less demand and save money. But also bring in money for the city, and then also install EV chargers, which the city of Covington has begun to do. So we just got our first EV chargers for the city of Covington very recently.
And
great experience.
We went into the second project with high expectations, because the first one really, I think, blew us away, and we were very, you know, proud to bring the report that the students did to our city officials. We were so impressed that if you look in the annual report for the center for last year, that on the page about industry engagement, there's a quote from Sustainable Newton. So we're very strong advocates for the work that the students do, and that Michael and David are doing. So, you know, everybody on here, if you're interested in, if you think you've got an exciting project, I would really encourage you to reach out to them, because we found it to be tremendously valuable.
And I just know how much the students enjoyed working with you guys. They had an amazing, and amazing experience.
That's great to hear.
I guess it goes to me now. Michael touched on a couple of very important ways in which we engage with industry at the center around programs that involve our students in these various ways of tackling real world challenges. Whether it's in the carbon reduction challenge, these students have an internship and they may be working in supply chain management or for a marketing group or something along those lines that doesn't have a sustainability bent, but it gives them an understanding and appreciation of no matter what their job, there's opportunity to find ways to bring sustainability into that job. And so we think that's a really important experience that they have. And then with the Practicum project, the companies are bringing challenges that they're grappling with and asking the students to jump on those, and they love getting the fresh ideas from the students. But we have a number of different ways we involve companies. We have a very robust advisory board that has about 24 businesses and organizations, including the city of Atlanta. And we have an executive council for our more significant partners. Delta was the inaugural member of our executive council. And we involve our industry partners also in our speaker series. We have the Business, Environment, and Society speaker series that we're rotating, having industry speakers and faculty speakers to talk about different topics that would be of interest. Our current theme is on sustainability and innovation. And in April, we'll have Bert Feeling, Executive Vice President from Southwire, talking about Southwire's experience in using sustainability to drive innovation within Southwire. And there's always the possibility of sponsored research if a company wants to engage a faculty in more deep dive. It may be as a result of a practicum project. They say, well, can we dive deeper into this and get faculty and maybe some additional PhD grad students to dive in deeper? We will do that as well. I think Michael you didn't touch on the executive education component of education, kind of the education channel of our work, but we participate in some existing sort of standing executive education programs with corporate partners, particularly around how sustainability integrates with supply chain management. But we also will establish some custom programs for companies to educate their folks on areas of particular interest for them. And two corporate engagements just to highlight. One was working with Delta. They came to us. They have a very active employee group called
Green Up.
Green Up, yes. It has like 3,000 members, I think, across the world within Delta. And they wanted to find a way to inspire and tap into this energy and creativity. So they created a employee competition. We helped them to frame that competition, to develop the criteria for evaluating projects, and even did a webinar on corporate sustainability to prime the pump with those folks that would be participating, and then got to see the 5 finalists come and present to executives at Delta. So that was really neat to see, inspiring kind of what some folks refer to as the entrepreneurial spirit of employees within businesses. And then with Coca-Cola, they established a couple of years ago a very ambitious goal to divert from landfills an equivalent amount of plastic and aluminum that it relates to the cans and plastic bottles that are used to deliver their products. And so they came to our center to engage with experts from Georgia Tech and outside of Georgia Tech on what the guiding principles should be for that program going forward, and how would they best measure success as they began to implement that program. And I think after that, we had at least one, maybe 2 practicum projects with Coca-Cola that dove into more specific aspects, like how do you increase the recycling rates for some of this material by maybe cooperating with convenience centers, with QT or Racetrack, for example. So those have been really robust partnerships, and we we always appreciate them bringing those real world challenges to our students. So that was a good general background on our center and our industry engagement. We wanted to just come back to the Drawdown Georgia aspects, because that's where we're really focusing a lot of effort. Our signature program that we're emphasizing right now is business engagement on Drawdown Georgia. And John Lanier spoke, I think it was back in January, to this group about the evolution of Drawdown Georgia, how it started with the Project Drawdown, looking at 100 solutions for reducing carbon emissions globally. And so then the Ray C. Anderson Foundation funded Georgia Tech, Emory University, University of Georgia, and Georgia State to work together on evaluating those 100 solutions and figuring out which ones are most viable or most impactful here in Georgia. And so out of that came 20 solutions that were deemed to be very viable for Georgia. They had the potential of reducing at least 1 million metric tons of carbon per year. And so now we're moving into a phase of, okay, so we've done the research. How do we activate and accelerate deployment of these solutions? And our center is specifically tasked in looking at bringing together businesses, forming a collective commitment to carbon neutrality here in Georgia, and finding collaborative ways to implement the 20 drawdown solutions and other solutions that will help Georgia move in that direction. And so here are the 20 solutions that were identified by the research. And we're not going to have time to dive into these, but you can fortunately go to drawdownga.org and click on these different categories and these different solutions and get more detail about what the solution entails and the ability of each of these solutions to reduce emissions. But you can see we put them into 5 different buckets of from electricity to looking at land sinks and really trying to figure out what the potential was for achieving reductions. And so we took an approach where we looked at if we could just max it out, if technically what's feasible for each of these solutions, how far could we go? And there is a lot of tremendous potential in these 20 solutions. And if we did as much as we possibly could, as much as was technically feasible, we would be able to go beyond net zero carbon emissions just in the next 10 years and really be in a net positive situation here in Georgia. But that is looking at some things that maybe are a little unrealistic, like the amount of electric vehicles that are going to be on the road. It's not going to be 100% of the vehicles running electricity. Our grid's not going to be 100% renewable power at that time. Just understanding that there are some constraints to implementing some of these solutions. So the researchers looked at, what do we think is really achievable? Not feasible, but achievable. And looking at, for example, with electric vehicles, that it's more likely that the amount of new vehicles entering the market by 2030 overall would be somewhere around 10% or so. Even though a lot of companies are converting their fleets to electric vehicles, you're going to have a lot of legacy vehicles still on the road for a while. So just looking at things like that and looking at, well, not everybody is going to be able to put solar panels on their rooftops, regardless of whether there's an income tax credit or not. There's barriers to accessing that solution. Like not everybody has $10,000 to $15,000 or can afford the additional cost of paying for that over time. So in terms of achievable potential, the research showed it was about 35% reduction that could be achieved just in the next 10 years, which is great and gives a lot of, it's a great start. It builds a lot of good critical momentum. It suggests that there's opportunity for us to even do more. And there are other solutions that can be deployed to hopefully we could achieve a 50% reduction in 10 years and really move towards carbon neutrality by 2050, which is an overall target. And so with this, I'm going to pass it to Michael to talk about, in addition to those 5 categories and looking at the technical aspects, we did a review of what we were calling beyond carbon aspects as well.
Thanks, David. We tried to take a look not only at, we started with a sort of large basket of solutions, wanted to make sure that we were thinking about things that were not just, carbon focused. While that, of course, was the overall objective of the project, was to identify the highest impact carbon mitigation solutions. We wanted to look at what we call beyond carbon dimensions, and you can see those represented here. Other environmental issues, things like improvements in air quality, issues around water and land use, ecosystems and biodiversity, et cetera. And similarly related to that one, I'll jump to the last one, is what are some of the benefits, and if there are any, what are some of the concerns with respect to public health as a result of a large-scale transition to these solutions. And then we did, and are still in the process of doing some jobs assessments and sort of GDP impacts by having these solutions move forward. And of course, there is both, it's a net thing, right? There's some displacement that's going to occur in addition to adding jobs. And then we took a hard look as well at equity considerations. You can see there, by the way, the color coding is, if it wasn't obvious, green is like, positive benefits overall, and the orange is sort of, there might be some positive benefits, but there's some areas to watch or issues of potential concern. So rather than going through all of these boxes individually, I wanted to highlight the equity issues. So overall, most of these solutions bring public health benefits because of the improvements in air quality. There's a couple where local air quality could be a concern, or other siting issues could be a concern. But for the most part, the public health dimension does pretty well on the equity side. Where there are concerns that cut across a number of solutions, it comes down to solution access and affordability. So, think about rooftop solar, EVs, even silvopasture. I mean, these are solutions that make a whole lot of sense, and that they're often either completely inaccessible or unaffordable for under-resourced individuals and communities. The other challenge that we see is, unfortunately, and this is borne out in the research, if you look at rooftop solar, there are racial disparities in solar adoption, even after you account for income. So there's some issues here, not only to watch, but that if we're going to transition to some of these solutions, there needs to be a concerted and intentional effort to make sure that these provide equitable outcomes. The other one is on the job side. Again, now I'm talking about there are some overall jobs benefits and GDP benefits for many of the solutions, but specifically as it relates to equity, if you look again, I hate to pick on solar because it's also true of some of the other solutions as well, but the solar workforce is both nationally and in Georgia is pretty much dominated by white males. So if you're talking about economic development and prosperity for local communities, we've got to do a better job diversifying that workforce and offering, opportunities for small business and growth and so forth. So anyway, we wanted to make sure that we at least flagged where we saw benefits and where we saw some concerns with respect to each and every one of these solutions. So anyway, that's why you see all this complicated looking color coding thing. Here are just some observations, and this is still a bit of a work in progress, but some, as we talk about jobs, overall jobs, certainly right now, as we look at the analysis of the EV solution, for example, it does appear to have some net benefits from a jobs creation perspective. Energy efficiency related solutions and retrofitting definitely seem to offer some positive benefits and some job opportunities. Cogen is another one where there could be significant jobs if that solution was implemented at scale. And then similarly, the solar industry with scaling those solutions would create a lot of jobs. Again, but we need to also think about what kinds of jobs and who's has access to those job opportunities from an equity perspective. Just to give an example of, I'm picking on the retrofitting solution, which was largely focused on the commercial side, but there's certainly a residential component to this. And one of the challenges from an equity perspective is the extremely high energy burdens here in the city of Atlanta and more broadly across the state. And for those of you who may not be familiar with energy burden, it effectively refers to the ratio of how much money are you spending on your utility bill over your overall household income. And our numbers are the proportion is too high in Georgia and in Atlanta. So how can we use retrofitting as a way? I mean, retrofitting could in effect be the solution technically to some of the energy burden challenges, but those who are experiencing energy burden don't have particularly the resources to pay for this stuff. So, we also tried to look at, some possible solutions. There's pay as you save programs, there's on-bill financing, there's a number of things that are either in place or being tested in other locations. And we'd like to go, as the solution moves forward, to be able to find ways to, bring these solutions to a greater scale to benefit more people. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back to David. But that was sort of, you saw the carbon focus and the beyond carbon focus of sort of our phase one work and coming up with the 20 solutions. And now David is going to talk about the business engagement that we're specifically doing around Drawdown Georgia and trying to get these solutions to scale.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. As we are moving into sort of phase two of the Drawdown Georgia work, there are 3 tasks that are ongoing overall, and we're taking the lead on the business engagement element. One is to try to figure out ways to track emissions at a county scale or at a metro city scale and be able to look at progress over time. And so some of our folks at Georgia Tech School of City and Regional Planning, they're expert in GIS and geospatial display of data, are working on that element. And then we're also looking at how can we develop more activation of specific solutions, creating implementation plans and then tracking the efficacy of those solutions as they're deployed, sort of going through some of the more practical aspects of implementation. And so as we look at our role in how do we stimulate interest within business community and hopefully accelerate the investment in these solutions, we're looking at it in terms of 3 elements. First of all, we wanted to baseline ourselves and to establish baseline data on where are the carbon footprints in Georgia, who has the largest carbon footprints in Georgia, and where are they located. And what you're seeing there is the state of Georgia with some data displayed in terms of the relative magnitude of emissions and where they are distributed. And there's EPA maintains a data set that you can dive into and look at who are these companies and how much they're emitting. And so that begins to give us a good understanding of where we might prioritize our efforts. We're also looking at what companies have the most significant footprint in terms of the economy, that employ the most people, generate the most revenue in the state that we would want to engage with as well. But then making sure we have diversity across sectors and diversity across the size of companies. We don't want to just have a bunch of big companies. We want to have some mid to small size companies as well. And then really involve some of the innovators, people that might be able to disrupt the existing markets, if you will, with it bringing new solutions to bear. So that's part of our baseline analysis. Then we're looking at some of the existing efforts at the national and international level, where you've got coalitions like We Mean Business Coalition, which is bringing together businesses that are saying, yeah, we're willing to make commitments on a variety of things related to climate action, whether it be on carbon neutrality for our overall emissions, or whether it's on converting our vehicles to electric vehicles, or buying 100% renewable energy for our electricity needs. So We Mean Business Coalition is kind of this broad effort And then there's a push to get companies to adopt science-based targets that look at the results of research from across the scientific community that says, in order to avoid some pretty catastrophic effects of climate change, we need to reduce emissions by about 50% over the next 10 years and then down to net zero by 2050. And so you're seeing more and more companies taking that ambitious step of setting carbon neutrality goals, some even accelerating their goals. And Race to Zero is one of those that's really for those who are at the forefront of that ambition level and that are really committed to achieving carbon neutrality. So we want to look at what's already in place and underway, and how do we develop the best fit of some sort of a compact or coalition of companies for the state of Georgia that looks at, okay, yeah, you may have emissions all over the globe, but you're based here in Georgia or you have a significant operations in Georgia. How can you contribute to Georgia's overall transition? And so that leads to the third element, which is all about finding specific opportunities to collaborate, to leverage the resources of businesses, working with other stakeholders in advancing some of these solutions, deploying different solutions, but not losing sight as we do that on the important elements of equity, economic opportunity, environmental quality, and community health. So we've had some really exciting conversations with a number of companies, both our advisory board members and others, that they see the potential in working with other companies to entertain some some cross-sectoral partnerships to implement some of the solutions, some of the 20 solutions that we've talked about already. So that was really a blow through lightning fast of Drawdown Georgia and some of the ways we're working to engage businesses. We wanted to leave you all with an appreciation for opportunities for you to get engaged. A quick shout out to one of our partners, the Partnership for Southern Equity, that has created this series of communities or circles around energy, growth, economic inclusion, health, that you can get involved with these individual circles of our communities of practice, if you will, that are coming together on a monthly basis and looking for ways to make improvements here in our community in Georgia and across the Southeast. So if you're interested in that, we'd be happy to connect you with Partnership for Southern Equity and help you figure out how to get plugged in there. Michael mentioned the RCE Greater Atlanta, and that acronym RCE, it stands for Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development. It's such a mouthful that we just say RCE, but just to understand that it's, as Michael said, it's a regional network focused on how do we educate people on the imperative that's behind the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has advanced, and that a lot of companies are also trying to contribute to. And more you see companies aligning their sustainability strategies with these 17 goals and being able to articulate how they're supporting things like no hunger, no poverty, increasing quality education, decent work opportunities, et cetera. And then lastly, we welcome your participation in Drawdown Georgia. There's one of the neat ways you can participate is on the Drawdown Georgia website. You can link to a system called Group It, where you can throw your ideas of solutions into that system and share those across a variety of folks. So be a part of the Drawdown Georgia movement by throwing in your ideas for solutions. You'll see if you follow Drawdown Georgia on social media or you follow Sustainable Newton, you'll hear about a number of events that come up. There'll be opportunities as well. And then with our center, if you're part of a business and would like to join us in the Drawdown Georgia Compact that we're organizing and going to be launching soon, then please give us a shout as well. I think that is pretty much it as far as slides. We can open up for discussion. Back to you, Maurice.
Yeah, and gentlemen, thank you so much for covering everything that we'd hoped to and more. I want to say one quick thing about how Sustainable Newton is trying to participate in this work, and then we'll open it up for questions. I know we have one in the chat already. People can post your Q&A there, or if you're willing, I can take you off mute and let you ask your question yourself. But David, when he did the first part of his presentation, went through the 20 solution framework and talked about the story of going from a global perspective with Project Drawdown to a Drawdown Georgia local state perspective. What we're trying to do in Sustainable Newton is bring this down another level to our county. What can we do? Because, you know, that's kind of why our group exists, is to try to find actions that make a difference locally that add up to something big globally. So through the magic of Zoom, if you're with us on this platform, at the end, one of the tabs that opens up on your browser is going to go through those 20 solutions and where we're doing activities now. So if you're a business owner, a citizen engaged in this, we'd love to have you join us in the things we're already doing and help us find other ideas. David also mentioned Group It. Several of us on the Sustainable there, and one of the neat things I get to do is highlight what we're doing here in that platform, which puts, you know, things like our electric vehicle charging station, the greening the fleet study, you know, things that we're doing, it puts them on that stage so that the other parts of the state understand what we're doing. And that ties, I think, to what Michael was talking about with Beyond Carbon, because on this call, on this session today, I know we have some folks from our social justice organization. And Michael stressed all the equity aspects of this. We can, I mean, as you can see, this stuff is happening now. I mean, the transition to clean energy, the transition to electric vehicles, it's all happening with or without us. But we have an opportunity to shape it so that it benefits everyone. So if you're a social justice warrior, we want you working with us. If you're in the economic development realm, I think, as I said, we're sharing what we're doing. It makes our community an attractive place for people to want to be. So we have people here from the chamber, our business leaders, our economic development community. We want to partner with you as Sustainable Newton, so you see how this effort ties to, you know, the development of our local economy. And people from the health sector, people, our doctors, our nurses, our hospital officials, again, you know, the public health benefits that go beyond just carbon reduction and addressing global warming. So check out that tab, but whatever your perspective is on this, I think these gentlemen have given you a great way to understand how what we're doing ties to what you do every day. So I want, again, open it up for questions. I'm going to look at the Q&A and see what we've got here already, and either put your questions there or just raise your hand and I'll let you speak. So one of the questions here from an anonymous attendee: how will you measure the success of the Beyond Carbon goals, such as public health impacts and cultural fit and way of life?
Yeah, that's a great question and an important question. We on the public health side, you know, what we try to do with respect to several of the solutions is to look at the pollutants that are displaced by transitioning to one of the 20, you know, whatever solution we're talking about. And by that reduction in pollutants, you can directly measure that against, you know, reductions in asthma, reductions in other forms of diseases, enhanced, you know, lower rates of morbidity and so forth. And actually, we have to do that work. I'm not the expert on the analytics around that. We're working with an organization called GreenLink, and they are the experts on doing the analytics around some of these direct impacts. For things like cultural fit and way of life, it's probably less of a quantitative assessment and more qualitative. And I think, you know, both putting the perspectives of our team together, but more importantly, gathering perspectives from communities and individuals around these solutions, which is one of the things we're trying to do. David mentioned the RCE Greater Atlanta at the end, and there was a project there that is specifically focused on looking at least a subset of the solutions purely from an equity lens. And so cultural fit and way of life would certainly be one of the attributes we would want to engage on as it relates to these solutions.
Well, just as a follow-up to what Michael said, you know, when you look at health, there are a number of social determinants of health, you know, factors that contribute to the health and well-being of folks. And when you look at solutions like retrofitting, if you look at retrofitting houses, a lot of times that has to do with shoring up the the quality of the houses with new windows and insulation, and maybe removing inefficient heat and air systems that might be contributing to mold and sort of poor quality indoor environments. And then in the Southeast, in Atlanta, with the heat, if you live in a house without air conditioning or without a good air conditioning system or without insulation, you can begin to bake in your house. And so by making these retrofits in houses, putting in some improvements, it improves the quality of life for the residents. It improves health outcomes overall as well. So understanding that interplay between how some of those more social determinants impact on community health is important.
All right, thanks. I've got a raised hand here from one of our founding board members, Theodosia Wade. So Theodosia, I'll let you ask your question.
Thank you. This is a question really for Michael and David, but we are in Sustainable Newton, we are very interested in engaging our business community, small and large, as you mentioned, that you all have that same goal. And I wondered if we might be able to partner with you all in a way that would set a model that you could use around the state for actually creating those partnerships in different communities. And just thought about an intern or a fellow. You mentioned a lot of we've really enjoyed, as Sarah said, the programs, the students who have helped in our community already for the 2 projects that we've done, but really thought that it might also be something that we could get maybe an ambassador, a fellow. I was looking at all those options and wondered if you've done that already in a community, or if we could, partner with you all in some regard.
I'm happy to start, David, and then correct me when I steer off the road here. I absolutely would be the short answer. And we do have our cycle for fellows and ambassadors starts again in the fall. So that would be a perfect opportunity to present this as an option for a fellow, or actually the program has grown so much that we now have the fellows and ambassadors working together in typically groups of 2 or 3. So it's not quite as structured and intensive as like a practicum course, but students are just Georgia Tech students. I'll express my bias. I'm just bowled over just how impressive they are and what they're able to accomplish. So we'd certainly be willing to look into that. Internship is another possibility, as you mentioned. I'll stop there and turn it over to David to get his perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting, Theodosia, you raised that, because one of the things we've been talking about is, in addition to the statewide compact of businesses with making a collective commitment to, we're going to transition Georgia's economy, there's opportunity for counties and regions below the state level to have their own collective impact efforts, right? I mean, we have some incredible industry partners in Newton County and in some of our adjacent counties that, General Mills is looking aggressively at how to reduce their carbon emissions, just to shout out one of those partners. If they wanted to come together in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, there would be, we would love to work with them and make sure that we can provide them with access to resources and expertise to tackle together the carbon footprint that is in Newton County, and really demonstrate how that working together can make such a significant difference and show leadership within our community, which will just do more to make Newton County an attractive place for people to do business.
Okay, while we wait and see if anybody else wants to raise their hand or type something in the chat, I had a question, and that is, when we started, even three years ago in Sustainable Newton, it felt like sustainability was a 6-syllable word that we spent more time explaining than we did acting on. And yet, I watch what's happening in the news, and I watch the kind of students that I see, coming through your program and follow on social media and see them. So both from a business perspective, businesses you deal with, and also the students that come into the program, are you seeing a difference in the conversability that they have with sustainability coming in?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, on the student side, when I first got here, so this is not by any means like a formal study, it's just anecdotal evidence. But when I would go around talking to student groups about the work that we do and about sustainability and so forth. And typically when I use the term sustainability, I'd say, so you just use that term, what do you guys think I'm talking about? And the response was typically, which is not a bad response, but wasn't the one I was looking for, was typically, sort of longevity of the enterprise, right? Financial, they were thinking more about financial sustainability. To which, of course, I said, well, that is part of it, right? By addressing environmental and social issues, you're thinking about the long term, and that will, in fact, contribute to the longevity of the enterprise. Now, I have students we have students approaching us all the time who just want to get engaged on environmental and social issues. And so it's even over the last 4 years, I've seen I think a sea change in terms of student interest here at Scheller and also across campus. And then the other part of your question, now I'm drawing a blank. I had a
on the business side, which David can maybe give us.
Well, yeah, I was thinking, Michael, that one of the things we also see is you see CEOs of major companies taking, I guess, center stage in articulating their company's commitment. Typically, it's not just the sustainability director or others. It's and I'll give a shout out to Delta Airlines because they just had an announcement, or a release yesterday of a really neat video talking about their ongoing commitment to carbon neutrality and to zero impact aviation. And Ed Bastian, the CEO, he's the one leading off this announcement and posting this on his social media feed, and so showing that leadership at the highest levels. And we saw the Business Roundtable, which is a group of CEOs from all these major companies signing a letter that was a statement of purpose saying we recognize that businesses have to go beyond profit and look at the obligations to our broader stakeholders.
Maurice, you mentioned earlier Larry Fink and BlackRock. So we're seeing you see investors being much more vocal about their interest in making sure companies are managing sustainability issues. You see customers, people starting voting with their dollars more frequently now, wanting to make sure they come. And then increasingly what we see are companies are revisiting their purpose, purpose-driven companies as a way to tie sustainability and the business drivers more explicitly together.
All right, well, we've reached the top of the hour, and we try to stay on schedule. But Michael and David, I want to thank you not just for joining us for this hour, but the openness that you've shown our organization, the collaboration that you've made possible. And I mean, for us as an all-volunteer nonprofit out here in Newton County, to be accepted and treated as as important as the corporations that you guys are talking about really means a lot. And I know Mayor Horton put something in the chat. He was not able to speak up due to other things going on, but the city is very grateful. And I know our other businesses and local governments are also very grateful for the work you do. So thank you for that. And we look forward to continued collaboration. And for everybody who joined, if you joined from outside of Newton County, we're really glad that you stopped in to, learn about this program that I know can benefit you, but also to know what we're up to out here. And for everybody in this community, again, in a day or two, you'll get an email with a replay to this. I'd ask you to please share it around to folks in the community that you think would like to be involved, and then contact us directly and let's talk about what you can help us do, because we're always interested in doing more. Appreciate everybody's time. I hope everybody has a great day and a good weekend, and we'll see you soon with another event. I think we've got one coming up April 1st on solar energy, so look for that on our calendar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. Appreciate it.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.